What's going on? It's Fist, bringing it straight from my heart for me to you, because that's what I do. And this is a game of Titanfall. Yes, you see it. It's coming, only 4 days away. And you know what's... if you get to listen to me on Twitter, or, actually, watch me on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Fist, F1ST. We talk about some amazing stuff on Twitter about gaming, developers, what's going on in the gaming world. That is like where the information highway is at. And here's some interesting stuff that I want to bring up. I read a story, and it all made sense to me. You know, I was reading stories that Cliff Leblinski was pointing out about how AAA studios are toxic, and I really didn't understand. Like, I thought he was kind of being a bitch about it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I didn't say he was being a bitch. I was saying like some of the stories were being bitches about it. Like, you know, being in a studio and have to meet deadlines, and they have AAA titles that are coming out, and then people wonder why gaming is so bad. So I read a story on Forbes magazine. I don't have the link to it, and it was about how WhatsApp had went from nothing to something. You know, they sold their apps. You know, they sold their app to Facebook for $19 billion. If you're living under a rock, you probably wouldn't know, but it's basically SMS texting for free, maybe $1 if you live in another country. It was a way that basically was the typewriter, and it was out of date, and it was a cash cow for the phone companies, and they were raping everybody. So this WhatsApp came up, and they basically, because, and you want to know how this ties into gaming, and I'm going to tell you how it ties into gaming, because this is where the industry is going. So you have a bunch of toxic studios, meaning they have people over top their back. They gotta put the game out. They got deadlines to meet, and that's that. You know, whatever happens, they'll deal with it later. You know, it's never gonna be finished. So when I was reading the Forbes story and how they came about their SMS messaging, was the fact that the iPhone put a ping system in. So you could ping people and say, well, I'm not here for the messaging, you know, see you back later. And so they started talking to each other with these, like, you know, messages, leaving these messages through the ping system. And they would have never discovered this if they didn't have people over their backs watching what they're doing, meeting deadlines. Basically, what I'm saying is that I understand what they mean by toxic and why all these independent studios are going off on their own to develop games. And it's kind of like a vacuum from Call of Duty. It pushed out all these other studios who had to meet deadlines and failed on every deadline, and it's just the wrong business model of doing gaming, and it was toxic. And that's what they mean by toxic. They didn't have the time to dig deep enough to discover things. Like WhatsApp discovered the ping system on the iPhone and turned it into, you know, WhatsApp. You know, the free texting system. Now, that's basically what I've been doing for 7 years if you think about it. I've been playing Call of Duty, playing all these first-person shooters, and I've had time to look at the games, and I could literally go into any studio like Killzone. I mean, I'm playing Killzone last night for the very first time, the new Killzone, and I'm saying to myself, this game has better graphics than Titanfall. It is 2 or 3 steps away from being the most epic first-person shooter ever made. But the thing about it is that they don't have the time. They don't have the epiphany. They don't have being in the trenches playing the game every single day. And that's why you get all this weirdness, or these like anomalies in Call of Duty and all these games, because what happens is you have people who have social influences, like pro gamers and people who are on Twitch and people who are on Twitter and people who are on YouTube, who influence these developers, but that's not the way the game should be developed. The game should be developed on your time. and you should be in the trenches, and you should have private investors, and that's what's great about indie developers. And unfortunately, it's sad that Xbox One is blocking these people out. And I'm seriously going to say that probably the next best thing that's ever going to come out is probably going to come off an indie game on the PS4, and then it'll leap over to the Xbox. Xbox it's secluded itself. Hopefully they open up. It's very sad. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, now I understand why everything is toxic. You know, you look at Titanfall, yeah, it has a lot of freedom and a lot of great gameplay, and they put in like the bare basics, but it lacks the graphics. It lacks the epic sound. I mean, it has decent sound, but it's not on the same sound level as Killzone. You look at certain games and there's a lot of things missing. Like, they're trading off. Okay, we'll trade off graphics. We love graphics. We love sound. We're not really, maybe they haven't discovered the ping system in the iPhone, whereas freedom in the movement of Killzone, the game, hasn't been fully understandable and implemented into the game. You can see the levels of development on each game, what they're missing. And it's because they don't have unlimited funds, and they have to have deadlines, and they have to pay payroll, and they have to pay bills. But if you had a studio that had private backing, like the WhatsApp had, can you imagine if you're in the trenches and you played every single one of these first-person shooters like I had and done, and I can produce my own game? What kind of game without the toxicity of having a developer behind you telling you got to have the game out by a certain time? And maybe this is what Activision is finally understanding after ruining Guitar Hero and killing every golden egg they lay. So, I hope that, you know, Respawn, it looks like they've learned their lesson from, you know, their situation with, you know, Activision, and Activision learned from their situation with them. And maybe these AAA studios are making a change, but I think what the indie studios are doing is incredible. Anyways, until next time, get the fuck out of here.